These are people that are working right now, and they're relevant, they're doing it, and not that there was anything wrong with those shows, but they're not Chicago PD, they're not The Following, they're not CSI, so they're, you know, and that's who we have here. We have some wonderful manager, a couple great agents, a couple of wonderful executives that have been instrumental in my career so far, so I'm happy to share my relationships with these people with you guys, so give them a hand for being here on Saturday. So the first person I'm going to pick on is Mike McGrail, who is he's a writer on The Following. He and I were actually talking a couple of weeks ago about his experience with Jeannie Mao, who's a vice president over at CBS and Current, and she runs the director and writers program, and Liz Devine, who's a co-executive producer writer on CSI, and obviously I want to hear your journey, Mick, and your journey, Liz, and how you got to where you are. But Mike, why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey and how this sort of came full circle for you today?
Yeah, I came out here maybe 10 years ago, and came out, didn't know anyone. I was working at the Staples on Santa Monica Boulevard. It was, I didn't have a lot of, I didn't really, again, didn't know anybody. And then I got a job through a cousin I didn't even know was out here, who worked on CSI, and said, you know, I get you a job in post as a PA, and I was like, I want to write, that's really what I want to do, you know, and, but you know, obviously I'll take whatever I can get, and I took it, and I was in post for 7 seasons on CSI before I was able to finally get a episode to write. But as I was there, it's just funny being on this panel because I look at Jeannie and Liz, and I used to make them DVDs, like at 2 in the morning, like you're going out, like, I mean, just exhausted, and like your goal is to get them their DVDs and get it out and all that stuff. So, but you know, it was one of those things where I never knew I was going to be able to write, you know, on the show, or just generally speaking. And then yeah, I was there, and then they let me do an episode, and I didn't mess it up. And then yeah, and then they gave me an episode, and then I got staffed the next season, and then I just kept doing it and doing it.
And you went to Rizzoli and Isles after that for...
Yeah, I was on Rizzoli and Isles. I was there for the season, and then now I'm on The Following. And doing a lot of feature stuff too. And but those 6 years on CSI, where I was just in post, were the best years because I learned everything. I didn't go to film school. I went to school for English, so those years were invaluable. And like I look back, and you know, you get out here, you want to be the first person. You want to like sell a script the week you're out here, but like. Those years like are what made me a good writer when I had the chance to do it, like being in post, seeing cuts, seeing how things change, and I'm glad to have it when it did, when I was ready. So.
Mick, I'm going to go to you now.
Okay.
I'm going to save the best for last. No, I'm only kidding. But Mick, you and I also, we've had some great conversations about how you broke in, and the funniest story that you told me, and I'm going to leave names out of this, but somebody told you in this town that you would never work as a TV writer.
Yeah, I moved out here to be a comedian and to be a comedic actor, and then hopefully find a career writing in half hours and then maybe movies later on, as I would sit broke pondering what my dream career would look like. And I came out and I had heat, or whatever you want to call it, from Chicago as a comedian. I had done the Montreal Comedy Festival and done stand-up on Comedy Central. And an agency wanted to represent me, a huge agency, and I sent them my writing samples and a spec script that I wrote. It was a big, long table, and the agent sat me down and he said, "These are all the agents that are going to work on your career and give you a television career beyond your wildest dreams and make you a movie star." And I was like, wow, what did you think of the writing? And he goes, well, I'm glad you asked, and I want to show you how seriously I took the request to represent you as a writer. We brought in the head of the literary department. I said, wow. Head of the literary department comes in and says, I read your stuff, and I just want to let you know, look at all of these people who are so excited to make you a star. You will never, and I've been in this business for 22 years, you will never have a career as a writer. And I was like, wow. I said, I'm sure I would have liked to hear that between just you and I. I don't know if we had you assemble the whole agency here to get that point across. Maybe even an email. It would have worked out. Pretty sure I would have got your point. Could have just underlined never. I might have missed it. And they couldn't have been more excited to rep me as an actor, but I wanted to be represented in all areas. And
now you ran into that agent a few years later, right?
yeah,
And they asked you what was going on.
I ran into him in Detroit, of all places, at a poker table. And I said, you remember me? He goes, no. I go, I remember you. And he laughed about it, but you know, it's stung enough for me, I think, if there is a point to the story of like, to thine own self be true. You know, you have to be aware. This is writers write. And I don't believe that writers get paid to write. I believe we get paid to take notes. Because we write for free, right? Everyone's going to go home today and write for free. You do it for free. You get paid to take notes. So I viewed that as a gut check. And it requires tenacity. You know, last week was one of the hardest weeks in my career. It showed up out of nowhere, but that's when it showed up. So am I going to curl up in a ball, or do I have, don't throw your pain away. Don't throw the dues that you paid away. Lean into them a little bit, because all of that experience, it's not failure, it's growing pains.
And just give us a little rundown of all the shows you've been on so far, since the guy told you never.
The script that he did not like sold for 6 figures. I've written on Black Donnelly's Law & Order SVU, Detroit 187, Breakout Kings, Necessary Roughness, Chicago Fire, Chicago PD, Ironside, and sold 2 other network dramas. So I think he was wrong.
Thanks, Ben. Liz. Liz, I met a few years ago, actually, and again, she's a co-executive producer and writer on CSI, and we actually had a project that we went out with together, which was a lot of fun to do, and just to collaborate with somebody with so much experience was amazing. And I had, you know, I had never done anything in TV, so that was a really cool thing to do. And thanks for that, by the way, for that experience. But Liz and I have a law enforcement brotherhood kinship, so to speak. She was a real CSI for the LA County Sheriff's Office, and I'm an ex-cop. And we just, you know, we hit it off on that note, and away we went. But Liz, why don't you share a little bit about how you got from drawing chalk lines around bodies to where you are now?
Well, I worked 15 years with LA County Sheriff's Department, and in that time I worked on a couple of feature films as a technical advisor, just for a few days here and there, and I got a phone call that said that there's this new television show starting up, and they needed a tech advisor, and at the time I worked what we call 410, so I had Fridays off. So I said, okay, I'll try it out, and I'll see this show that's about what I do for a living, okay. And I had seen the pilot, and I liked it, and so I started working on Fridays on CSI Las Vegas in 2000, and we had different technical advisors. We had like 4 at the time, because I still worked full-time. And we rotated, and you know, there are a lot of different ways to do the same thing, but I'll tell you a funny story. Billy Peterson, who was our star, wanted to wear this green barbecue apron in the crime lab, and all the other TAs were letting him do it. And then, of course, I come on Friday, and I'm like, no, you need to wear a lab coat, because that's what we wear here. But he's from Chicago, and he's always really hot, so the set is freezing because he likes everything really, really cold. And he liked the barbecue apron because it was cooler. And finally, I told the wardrobe people, I want you to hide that barbecue apron. Don't offer it to him ever because he's always going to choose it. And he can only wear it in his office. And he says to me, God damn it, Liz, you're such a hard ass. I just want to wear this barbecue apron. And I said, no. So anyway, for some reason he liked me. And after we aired in October, it was a late start because of the Olympics that year, they offered me a full-time job as a technical advisor. And it took me about a month to, leave my 15-year career and do that. So I did. And I remember I started, the first day as a full-time worker, and I was scared out of my mind. I don't know why. It was just like, I'm really going to Hollywood to work on a television show? This is crazy. And that was the week that we switched from being Friday night at 9 to going up against Will and Grace. I was like, are you crazy? I just left my career and I went up against the number one. Are you crazy? And Anthony Zeiger, who created the show, said, when you want to go up against somebody, you go up against the best. We're going to beat them, and he was crazy. So then it became the number one show, and what I told the writers when I first started was, anytime they don't need me on set, I will come in the writer's room and I'll tell you every story, everything that's ever happened to me. You can ask me questions, whatever you want, I'll tell you. And I told one writer a story that was really close to me. It was a really tragic case that I worked on. And he pitched it to Carol Mendelson, my boss, and she came out of her room, her office, and she looked right at me and she said, I want you to write that story. And I was like, oh my God. I didn't have the software, I didn't have anything, I didn't know what I was doing. But I'd lived it. So they say, write what you know, and I know I'm taking too long, but they say write what you know, and I just, because I lived it, I wrote this episode, and they hired me as a writer. So that's how I came about. And then I worked on CSI and CSI Miami at the same time. That was almost killed me, because one was in Santa Clarita and the other one was in Manhattan Beach. So I chose one, and so I've been on CSI now for 15 years. Almost consecutively, took a couple years off to do pilots.
Thanks for, appreciate it. So I'm going to get more technical now and shift this more toward the reps. Andrea Simon, manager, Rena Brennan, agent, Ashley Holland, agent. And I guess the big question is going to be for new writers. This is about the golden age of television. This is about new writers, about fresh perspectives. How does a new writer separate themselves from, we all have distinctive, as writers, we have very distinctive points of view, but there's something that you're all looking for, right? There's something specific that you're looking for. How does he or she separate themselves from the pack and still maintain the integrity of what you guys want to see on the page from new writers? That's not a trick question, is it? Ashley, you're up.
Yes, I'm going first. My name is Ashley Holland. I work at CAA. Thank you guys for having me. I get asked that question a lot. What are you looking for in a writer? And I think the simplest, easiest answer is really good writing. And it sounds a little cliche, but ultimately, there's a lot of people who want to write. There's a lot of people trying to get into the business, and so really good writing is typically what stands out from everyone else. Most writing is okay or bad, and then there's a little bit of good writing. And I think the way that you get good at writing is, like I said, write every day. Like, you should be writing every day. I'm an agent 7 days a week. So if you're a writer, you should be writing every day. And if you're not writing every day, it's going to be hard to be a really good writer. So that's the advice I give most people who are very, very early in their career. I think the other thing too, just about finding representation, is I tell people don't print out your script and then hand it to someone to read to get representation. Make sure lots and lots of people have read it first. And if everyone keeps telling you it's really good, they will probably send it to someone to read and you won't have to do it yourself. So I would just say, write as much as you can and get as much feedback as you can. And when people keep coming back to you and telling you, wow, this is really good, or I really like this, I want to send it to my friend who works at CSI or whoever, that's usually the way that I see it happening most.
Well, I think that's a tough question to answer. In terms of what I'm looking for in a writer, it's kind of like the definition for pornography. I'll know when I see it. So, for young writers, I think what Mick was saying is like, when you're writing professionally, you're getting paid to write, and the way that I loved how you said it, is you get paid to take notes. So when you're writing for you, write what you know, like Liz said, write what you love because it comes out on the page. So one thing that's, am I looking for a specific story or this? You guys should be writing what you want to write. You don't want to reverse engineer the writing process. That you can do when you get paid to write. So just sort of a certain level of authenticity is something that I'm always drawn to. A cool new world, something that isn't superficial, right? So if you write what you know, write what you're passionate about, it comes out in the story, in the characters. You have a richer world that you're creating. In terms of advice, like everyone said, keep writing, because that opportunity is going to come when you least expect it. And the more that you have under your belt, the more refined your craft is because you're working on it, then the more ready you are when that opportunity presents itself.
I guess we could stop at Jeannie and then go to Andrea and Chris, because I'd love to hear your perspective on that as well. Just how a new writer, and just as an additional point here. Yeah, you can write every day, but there are writers that have amazing dialogue, and structurally they suck, or they have a great world, they have a great understanding of what they're writing, but they don't really have a grasp on the dialogue. So, can you speak to that a little bit more and kind of help, the newer writers understand that and how to get better?
Aside from waking up at 5 a.m. every morning and writing for an hour as a discipline as you would work out, it's definitely, and I tell these writers, have a portfolio and have a diverse portfolio and 3 or 4 specs, 4 or 5 pilots, a couple short plays, and a couple short stories, but give us a perspective in terms of who you are as a writer. Another thing we tell our writers to do in our program is write something you don't know. Especially if you've been a drama writer for all your life, try a multicam. I think it definitely tests your ability to exercise a different muscle and go back to that 1-hour drama that you're working on. It'll probably make you a better writer in that sense, just because you're using a different set of skills that you didn't know you had and able, in order to tell, kind of break down your character and give the character perspective. If you look at the platform of what television is these days, there's a lot of humor in our 1 hours. And that's a hard thing to write, especially for drama writers. And it's a different muscle in terms of being able to come up with tone and being able to arc a character who's seemingly so dark and tortured, but being able to find the humor and the levity and all that. What else can I tell you? I think it's definitely a discipline, and in our program, and Chris can probably speak to that, it's coming up with your basket full of stuff. And you didn't start becoming a writer last year. You've been a writer all your life. And whether you love television or grew up watching it or didn't at all, find something that you love and break it down. And if it's character you love, come up with a really good short story about a character I've never heard about that I'm gonna fall in love with in spite of whatever he or she is tortured by. So it's definitely, for me, it's character. Character is everything. We can figure out structure, we can figure out why you have 6 act breaks and it should be 4. Whatever it is, if the characters are there and the meat's there, then you're good. They're good.
I look for voice. I look for a strong personal voice. Something that you're uniquely qualified to do because of your personal background. Like Dave's situation as a cop has informed a lot of his writing and directing. And I represent a lot of playwrights and have also crossed them over into film and television. A lot of those writers have that great ear for dialogue, have the really strong characters, and then we help them learn the structure. And that's what I've been doing this. I was an agent for 7 years, and I've been a manager with my own business for the last 17 years. And I rep writers and directors, and a lot of hybrids. So people who want to do more than one thing. And my job is to help them really explore what they want to do. Oftentimes people will come to me wanting to write television for a long time, and then they decide they want to try some features, so we work on that. And my job is to help the client make the material the very best it can be. I'm pretty tough. Dave's about to go through that experience with me right now. We've done a first pass, and we're going to go back in and do some more work. Get it ready to go to market.
Chris?
I agree with everything everyone said. So I would just give you a bit of advice that I got from my dad 20 years ago when I told him I wasn't going to be a lawyer, that I was going to get into entertainment. And after he peeled his head from his hands, and rubbed his temples, he just said, "All right, son, just remember that story is about emotion. If you're ever involved with writing or directing or producing something, a story that has no emotion, then you failed. If people hate it, that's an emotion. At least you elicited something. So I would just impress upon you that when you do write something, make sure there's some emotion attached to it. Maybe even key on it. Even write about a certain emotion. Look at a theme to explore." It's been my experience that the writers who write things that they don't try to sell, I always get this question, my agent, he wants me to write this one thing that he thinks he could sell, but I have this thing that's clawing inside of me that I want to, I can't, stop thinking about. Write that, because that's all you're going to be thinking about, trying to write that thing about the guy who's a ghost who saw his crime, and all that shit, And those are the things that will make you successful. You'll make more money off of that thing that you don't think somebody will want to produce, because it'll be your voice. It'll be something that they've never seen before, which will enjoy, and they'll want to staff you and develop with you. This is the time, like Nick said, you get paid to. I'm going to steal that. I'm going to use that a lot, actually. You get paid to take notes, So this is the time to just write that stuff that is personal to you, that you've always wanted to see, that you enjoy, and I think that'll serve you well, in your careers.
And Chris, you come at this from a very unique perspective, because you were a writer before you became an executive. So, talk about that a little bit.
Well, I was actually an executive at NBC when they picked up Friends and ER. Did that for about 3 years, and got a little frustrated with the politics. And so I decided that I was going to leave, but I said to myself, let me write something so I understand that process. Because as a low-level executive, you're sitting in a room, and I would observe. I would observe writers bracing for that note. And I was like, what's that about? So over Christmas, I wrote this Spec Homicide, which was my favorite show at the time. And I realized, that it's personal. It's like it's DNA. So when you give it to somebody and they shit all over it in 5 minutes, that's like, a little bit of you dies, And then I also realized just how cool it was to create something from nothing. It's truly an artistic endeavor. I think a lot of writers forget that too, that they are artists. So I put it away, and one day I was walking down the hall in DC, and this black woman from travel stopped me and said, "You should write. The world wants to hear your story." I said, "What?" She goes, "You're a writer, right?" I go, "No, I'm an executive. You know I'm an executive. You've sent me to Montreal before." And she goes, "It looks like you're having she said, "You're having a bad time at work, aren't you?" And I said, "Who are you? What are you talking about?" And she said, "I'm sorry, I just realized if I didn't say anything that the Lord would be upset with me if I walked by and didn't say anything." I was like, "Oh, this is what it is." I was getting ready I was bracing for the pamphlet, an invitation to her church, her place of worship. And then she said, "Honey, just remember when a pig eats a pearl and shits it out, it's still a pearl. And you're that pearl." She said, "You're going to be leaving here soon, but you can't leave until the time is right. You have to remember when a mom eagle makes a nest, she puts thorns and bristles on the inside. So when a baby eagle's wings touch those thorns, it's forced to go out into the world." She said, "Your wings aren't quite there yet, but they're close." She said, "I see your gift being the ability to whisper in people's ears to help them find their creative path, their creative vision." So I was like, "All right." She said, "But tell your story. The world wants to hear it." So I went home to this apartment that I moved in with this young lady who I knew I was going to marry, and told her the story. And she's in finance, and she thought she was a studio executive, and now he's coming home talking about wanting to be an artist because he talked to some lady in the hallway.
Did she have a scarf and beads and all that?
No, she was a normal, she was a travel executive, And my soon-to-be wife said, "Look, it's a good story, but I feel like we have a future together, and I'd like to read the script, and if it sucks, I prefer you keep your day job." So I said, "That's fine." So she read it and came out 45 minutes later and said, "This is good, you can go for it." So I did. I went for it. I wrote for 7 years, ER the practice, and about 7 years into it, I started writing to sell stuff. I started asking myself, what can I sell? What does my agent want to see? And I'd always give my wife, she was like my first line of defense. And I always give her my scripts. About the third one in, she just gave it back to me and said, "I don't want to read this one." I was like, "Why not?" She goes, she's an avid reader. She said, "Because I don't know what you're trying to say as a writer. And Hollywood's not buying your shit, And I hate my job, and I'm starting to resent you, so we need to figure this out." So it was like one of those real adult things, and she said it totally respectfully. I can see in her eyes that she woke up that day and said, "Okay, how am I going to crush my husband's dream today?" And I did a lot of introspection and decided to go back to being an executive. I was just lucky enough to have that, that experience in my background. And I started working at Warner Brothers, and it made me uniquely qualified to run the Warner Brothers Writers Workshop, And so I realized, and I'll sum it up here, that in order to understand what it meant to be a writer, that one homicide spec wouldn't be enough. I had to walk in those shoes for 7 years to understand the insecurities, the anxiety, going from job to job, sitting in a writer's room saying stuff, wondering if people think you're stupid for saying, just all those things. And I'm glad I did it. It made me who I am today.
So, question for you: how many people here have a short film in this festival? All right, good. And then how many people here have actually written on a TV show? Okay, that's good. All right, so here's a question for the entire panel, right? I still consider myself an independent filmmaker, regardless of the fact that I've booked a couple TV shows, and I'm sure I'll book many more, God willing. I still will always consider myself an independent filmmaker. And for me, the transition as a director was different than a writer's path, because I went out 3 different times, raised money, got a cast together, wrote, produced, and directed my own features. And fortunately, they've all come out. But the accumulation of that body of work with several other things that I've done, got me the attention to be able to get these jobs. Obviously, it took some work, as we know, Jeannie and Chris and Andrea specifically, but how does a writer do that independently? How does a writer get noticed in order to try to get staffed as a writer on a TV show? What can they do independently, in other words? Because it's easy for me to do the whole thing as a filmmaker, as a writer-director, but if you don't have the skill sets of a director and you're just a writer, you know, what do I do independently to get noticed?
I like what Jeannie said earlier about having a body of work. You know, I've said, you know, a client has a script, we go out with it, we're getting good response, we're getting meetings, but you have to have a body of work, one script, one feature. You know, I liked her idea of, you know, short stories and plays and, you know, having different kinds of work, showing range, showing emotion, showing something that we haven't seen before. And you have to write every day and put it on the page. You might set it aside and say, this sucks. You give it out to people, but you have to really have a good body of work in order to get noticed. I think one script, you can't think that it's enough, because it's not. I share clients with Ashley, I share clients with Rena, and it's really important that you have multiple types of material to show to the town. Because there's so many, every single day there's a new avenue, a new cable network, a new WGN, it's unbelievable. The television business is very healthy right now, which is thrilling.
I think that there's a couple facets once the piece of work is done. You should, I won't say what you have to do. I want the work to be the best that it can be before it goes out. But then there's some other aspects to this that I had no idea about, which means an executive or somebody will read your work, and then you take a meeting based on the quality of your work. So they responded to it. And now there's an in-the-room element of how I am in the room with somebody that says, wow, I really responded well to this piece of writing. Long pause. So I hear you're from Chicago, or I hear you know so-and-so, whatever the little small talk is, and then I must be able to present who I am, the well that I go to as a writer, some of the things that I like, because ultimately when I get hired and paid to write, I'm going to be in a room full of other writers, other introverts, who now must collaborate together. So am I a story generator? Am I known as the joke guy? Am I known as broad stroke blue sky story pitches? And then really a writer's room is almost like a casting issue. You know, you want a lot of different voices represented, so every area of the human experience, ideally on a good day, is covered. And so then we all collaborate. So the writing, I think, is the key that opens the door. And then there's all these other things that I really had no idea about, that is almost, what kind of social skills do I possess? Or really, as a salesperson for my writing, am I the type of person that can be in a room with the same people for 10 or 11 months on end for 14 hours a day, not cause a disruption, bring a positive attitude, be a collaborator? Can I take notes? Can I turn scripts around? But all these other weird sub-levels that I had, you know, I thought, me write script, good. You know, like, and then that's it. Like, but it's just so many other aspects of it that I have to be aware of, where the script is the first thing, and that level of quality must maintain. And then I have to be aware of, like someone said, when that opportunity arrives, to be prepared. When an agent says, we want to meet you, or a studio or network executive says, come on in, it's going to be their referral from their experience. They responded to your writing and their experience with you as a human being that will then inspire the next call. Yes, please.
So when you do get an opportunity to sit in a room with an executive, you know, I've gotten a lot of people who just come in and you say, where are you from? And then you say, oh, Chicago. Like, that's a wasted opportunity. You know, understand that these executives love story. You know, if they're a good executive, they're there because they love story, they love to read, and and they read your material, and so they want to get to know you. So don't come in and think that you're wasting our time and try and give us a version of, and feel like you're imposing on us. So you should be able to tell your story with those emotional beats of your background that make them look at you and go, okay, this person, they're interesting, they're mature. I would put them in front of my executive and hope they hire them because I think they can add something to this show. And I can't tell you how many writers don't understand that. Because that is what's really going to help, make your career move forward. Because everything's on a page, but you can't be, a social moron either, as Mick was saying when you get into the room. So think of what your story is and be able to tell the story. Because you're going to have to tell stories, that's part of your pitches, so.
I agree with Chris. We meet with probably at least 20 writers a week. So we're gonna assume you guys are all really decent writers. But so are the 20 other people waiting outside my office, coming to make an impression. Practice your story in front of your friends. Research me, research the person you're meeting with, find a connection so that I remember you as opposed to you who didn't have a story. You are going to get hired based on who you know. We're going to, like I said, we're going to assume you guys are all decent writers. Television's a fast medium. We hire people, and Ashley and I have been in conference calls on Saturdays and Sundays in terms of hiring people. We hire people fast. Top of mind, remembering you because of, and being able to have the showrunner agree to spend 12 hours to 15 hours in a room with you is what's going to put you over the edge. That spec or that pilot you wrote was great, but what about you makes me want to hang out with you for 12 hours? You're going to be a staff writer. We're going to teach you how to figure it out. You're going to write to Liz's tone. You're going to write to the show's tone, but at the end of the day, why do I want to hang out with you for 15 hours and kind of teach you the ropes? Is a big deal. So aside from the writing, it's understanding the business, understanding what the marketplace is purchasing, watching a lot of television. Television's a fast medium. We do a table, it's going to be on air in 3 weeks. It will be on air. We don't stop and wait. The broadcast schedule doesn't allow for that. So it's a fast turnaround. So that's another thing that you can bring to the table. You're quick. The rewrites, you can pitch, if you're a comedy writer, pitch me 15, have that stuff in your arsenal so I have no other reason but to hire you. But like I said, television's a fast medium. We table, it's on the air, 3 weeks.
So not like Independence that
Nope,
take years.
nope. We don't have time. We need it delivered. It's usually, for dramas, it's an 8-day shoot. There's not a lot of liberties in terms of waiting on notes and turning it around. So you need to be quick at stuff like that. But aside from that, it's the business aspect, like everyone said. What sets you guys apart from everyone else sitting outside my office that I'm gonna pick up the phone and call somebody like Liz to be like, you need to meet this person. She's phenomenal, she's got a great story, she loves your show. Will you sit down and meet with her?
So it sounds like the independent film version for a writer is actually their own story once they get the opportunity to meet. Because, we've all written and we all hope that we can get that meeting, get that script to Liz, to Rita, to Ashley, or any one of you guys. So it sounds like that version of what I'm talking about, where hey, watch a DVD of this guy's entire feature. For the writer, there is no DVD. It's kind of a stand-up routine in the room. Whether it's dramatic or you have a great story or not, that's probably what you're looking for, right, Liz?
Well, it's interesting because it is sort of, I hate to say a popularity contest, but it is important, as an executive to come in and look at the way that people sort of get on in the room and you, like you said, you already read your script, so I already know you're a good writer. But I find it very odd sometimes when people come in to my office and they tell me they don't watch much TV. I've heard that so many times. I'm like, okay. sometimes they come in and they haven't seen the show. I mean, we've been on 15 years. There's no excuse for it. If you're coming in to meet with CSI, you should at least know who our characters are. I'm going to tell this story, and we have a new writer this year, and I'm totally going to call him out, but whatever. One of our actors came into the offices and couldn't find our showrunner, and so he went in and started talking to this new writer, and the writer talked to him for a little bit and then said, "What do you do on the show?" I mean, that actor was devastated. He told everybody else, it's like this big scandal. And I'm just like, so prepare. If you're going into a meeting with the show, watch the freaking show. You should know who the stars are. Don't say you don't watch TV, because you're interviewing for a television show. Even if you don't, you need to start. There's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of shows out there. It's impossible to watch everything that's out there. But I've got to tell you, I've had a lot of people come in and say they don't watch TV, and I can't. Well, I'm really an independent filmmaker, but I don't watch much TV. Well, why are you here then? Because this is TV. And when you're on the network shows, we've got a big schedule. You do 22 to 24 episodes. You're pitching ideas. You're reading everybody's scripts. You're giving notes on everybody's stuff. It is a treadmill, and you better be ready to jump in and have ideas and be ready to go every single day. And I want to see that enthusiasm. So when I hear that you don't like TV or you don't watch episodes or I've never seen CSI, if you're coming into CSI, you need to watch. If you go to see The Following, you need to know that Kevin Bacon is the star of that show. I mean, these are things that you need to know. So it is a preparation. You need to prepare and read and watch before you go in and know who the people are. Every time you go to an interview, you should be looking at IMDb and figuring out who you're interviewing with and what they do and what they've done, so that you do know a little bit, because it is all about making a good impression, knowing what you're doing.
Gosh, yes. I'm so glad you said that. Watch television. Everyone, if you want to work in television, it's important. There's a lot of it. A couple of things I tell people. One, addressing sort of the issue of if you're a writer, I would say find a tribe. So if writing is your thing, that's the only thing you do, you don't do anything else, then you better have a really good friend who's a director and a really good friend who's an actor, so that you can get shit done. Like, other people are doing it, so there's no, you just have to make things. And, I tell people who are young, students who are oh, I want to be a TV writer, I want to be I think those days are over. You could consider yourself an independent filmmaker, but ultimately you're a writer, you're a storyteller, or whatever you are. You need to know how to tell TV stories, you need to know how to tell movies, you need to know the difference between an indie film and a big commercial movie. You need to know how to tell things in short form, because maybe you're going to get hired to do the hero's 10-minute digital episodes, before you actually get a staff job. You need to know how to do everything. And so, speaking to Jeannie's comment about having a portfolio, whatever you are, do try lots of things. And ultimately, when you have a big portfolio, I think those are the people that we go and seek out. You have someone that's this guy keeps putting out these videos, or he keeps writing these scripts, or, if you're a Richard Linklater type, that, where the movie is have a theme, figure out what your calling card is, and people will come to you for your calling card. And I think the only way to do that is just to keep making stuff. And yeah.
And I think a couple people hit on this, but definitely relationships. Every job I've ever gotten has been through someone I know, someone being able to vouch for me, and being able to say, not only is he, a good writer, but he's a good guy. This guy, like you said, you could spend 12 hours in a room with and not want to kill, That's really important. I mean, and going back to the other point with research, I read everything. I meet so many writers who don't read everything that comes out during staffing season, or just even feature scripts, and to me it's you're only gonna get better reading and seeing what's coming out and all that, and I'm amazed by how many people I meet who don't read scripts, and they want to be writers. It's kind of similar with the TV. I don't get it. So that to me, and the same point about you going to a meeting, I research everyone I go to meetings with. I look them up on Facebook. I Google image them, so I know what they look like, so I don't go into a meeting not knowing who's who. Like, I do all that before I go in, just so you're prepared. So, I mean, those things will really help, and they show that if you're putting that work in before you come in there, it'll show, and then people they'll see that. So I think all that stuff's really important.
Well, I feel like everyone is saying similar things, and so maybe hopefully it's resonating. You know, as writers, you guys are really fortunate because you can write. You know, as for you as a director, you were able to make movies because you're also a writer. So you had a piece of material. Had you not been a writer, you would have to find that script, work on it with that writer, and maybe it would get there and maybe it wouldn't. An actor needs a script, they need a director, they need a budget, they need all of these things. So for you guys, you just need an idea and a pulse. Wow, I mean, then you can do your thing and do your craft, and then have the material that everyone is talking about. Now the other thing is you can't just be a writer in a cave. Especially if you want to be in TV writing, a lot of it is social, a lot of it is relationships. So until you have an agent, a manager, all of these things, you are your own agent, you are your own manager, you are your own publicist, you are the face of your company. So you need to write and you need to be out and active. You have to live in LA, maybe New York. You have to go to every party you're invited to, be +1 to everything, and then just be out there because you're not going to meet the person who's going to open the door for you sitting on your couch. So it's just about being active and being committed. Me as an agent, why am I going to take a chance on a writer who isn't committed to their own career? The amount of work that I have to do, I don't want to do it if someone's just kind of a hobbyist. Don't be a hobbyist. Be passionate. Choose it and really go for it. And then the opportunity will come. Maybe it won't, but you'll never know until you're out there.
And I've heard that, quite a bit. I've had conversations with agents and managers and execs, and they say that, the hardest piece of talent to represent in this town is a writer or director, because talent is talent. You're going to get the at-bats and with auditions, but when you're a writer and director, you don't get that many opportunities. You get a lot, just a fraction of what actors would get. So you really need to make the best of those opportunities when you get them, and be prepared when you get in the room. Practice your pitch. I often tell my friends, like, when I go meet with executives or whoever, it's an audition for me. I'm preparing for that. I want to get to know them and get to know what they're about, their sensibilities, where they're from, and so on and so forth. And I want to let them know that I have a fresh perspective that I bring to the table. So, so it's great that you guys all kind of chimed in on that, because I find it so incredibly important. I'm going to ask you guys one last question, and then I'm going to take some questions from these guys, who I'm sure have quite a bit. The business is changing, right? It's like the title of the panel, The Golden Age of Television. There's so many opportunities, so many new networks, streaming, Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, etc. Is it getting easier, or is it still as difficult as it's always been?
I think it's still as difficult as it's always been. There's more TV on the air than ever. That's the good news. The industry is growing. There are more networks that are just popping up, or networks that previously didn't do scripted TV that are now doing scripted TV. But that also means that everyone is spread really thin. So everything is changing, but that's the world we live in, that everything is constantly changing. So keeping your finger on the pulse is a really important thing. Watching what's on TV, being aware of what's out there, because you may have this really great show idea and you come in and have the opportunity to meet with someone. And you sit down and you say, I have this really great idea. It's this high school chemistry teacher who gets cancer, and then to save his family, he starts cooking. Well, yeah, it's a great fucking idea, but somebody already did it. So, it's still going to be harder than ever. And that's why it's just, like I said before, being active, and that's on our side too. Everyone has to work harder than ever, but it's not to say that anyone should be discouraged, but it's always going to be hard. I mean, if it were easy, wouldn't everyone do it?
Yeah, it's still hard. I mean, this staffing season this year felt like one of the, from even just friends, other writers, you feel that it's kind of like there's less opportunities, but there's better opportunities, if that makes sense. When they're getting jobs, they're on great shows. There's just really great things that are coming up. But it's really a matter of standing out. And a lot of the advice you're getting here are ways to help you stand out when that happens. Even though it is tough, I think what you're hearing here is just really the persistence of all that coming through. I think will really help.
I haven't been at it as long as some people on this panel, so I could have a different opinion, but I think it's getting harder for talent. There's more shows, but
Don't
the
leave.
no, this is just real talk. Like, the bar is very high, very, very high. To sell a television show, I mean, there are writers 10 years ago who kind of knew every year they would sell a TV show, and they were a writer working in the business, and so they would go out with an idea, and it would be fairly, it wouldn't necessarily be life-changing or something you've never seen before, and someone would pay them money to write it. And today, the bar is so much higher that, I mean, I have development executives at networks telling me all of the things they won't buy. I'm not gonna buy a soap, I'm not gonna buy a grounded family show, I'm not gonna buy newer procedurals. And you're like, well, what are you buying? Like, what show is that? Are you gonna have 40 losts? And so it's really tough to come up with an idea that no one has ever seen before, that's high concept, that's big. In TV, we haven't talked a lot about have a script, walk in as a writer by yourself and say, here's my script, do you want to buy it? Because somebody who came in before you, came in with their script, and a showrunner, and a feature director who wants to direct their pilot, and J.J. Abrams is producing. And that's what's happening. And so I think, there's more staffs, but most of the staffs are smaller. A lot of the staffs don't have lower level writers. So if you're trying to get your first job on I represented a playwright who, had a play on Broadway and was an Olivier Award-winning playwright, and it took her a year and a half to get a staff writer job. So it's hard. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, but I think that means you have to sort of know who else is out in the marketplace, what they're doing, how hard they're working, and you have to be willing to work that hard. And if you're not, you should do something else because you will probably make more money and work less. But if it's the thing that you can't imagine ever doing, it's important to understand the marketplace that you're entering into, reading the scripts that there are so many similarities if you look at all of the scripts that FX picks up, all of the shows that HBO picks up. If you read them, if you watch the first episode of every TV show that comes out, you will see that as much as they're different, they're also very much the same. And I was talking to a writer that Andrew and I worked with the other day, and I said, right now, that I feel like there's a weird trend in the marketplace where everything is really dark and edgy and child molestation and people eating each other, and that script is better than, Jason Katims was a staff writer today and went out with a script of Parenthood. I don't know, if we could get him a job. It's an exceptional show. He's an amazing writer, but the market just isn't looking for that show right now, or that style of writing necessarily. So I think it's really important to stay in tune to what's getting picked up, what's happening, because ultimately you're going to have to write for those shows, and so you need to have material in your portfolio that shows that you can do that.
Well, quickly, I think as a broadcaster, it's getting harder for us just because there's a ton of stuff in terms of inventory out there. But on that same note, it's great for you all because there's Yahoo and Amazon and Hulu, just in terms of different types of platforms that tell different types of stories. So understanding what Amazon just picked up relative to what CBS picked up is kind of key to understanding the marketplace. So in terms of answering the question, yes, it's harder for us as CBS because there's so much out there, and us trying to reinvent the fact that we do what we do. We have a broad reach. We do event series now. It's trying to evolve with everyone else, but staying true to what we normally do. But like I said, there's so many different types of stories, you guys. I mean, the notion of cable, like there were 3 broadcasters. Like, cable's huge. As is different types of mediums. Like, shows get picked up off a skit off Yahoo or YouTube. So it's kind of figuring out different unique ways to kind of get yourself out there. But I think you guys are all in a really great place in terms of transitioning into television. It's just kind of finding your way through that.
I do think it's harder out there. I know a lot of writers that I've worked with that are really good writers that aren't working right now. Most writers have had a bit of a break, if you know, there's nothing to be ashamed of about it, but it is hard to remain consistently employed. So I do think it's harder, and these are people that have experience, so they're not even the new ones coming in. So, you know, not to be discouraging, but you really do have to work really, really hard. And just because you get a job once doesn't mean you'll be continually hired. And that, again, isn't, you know, a disparaging on your writing. It's just sometimes the blend works and sometimes the blend doesn't work. And there are a lot of people competing. And, you know, I go to a lot of meetings where they say, oh, they're looking for a high-level female executive. And you see the same 7 women in every single waiting room. So, you know, that's what happens. You get sort of in these categories and you go to all these meetings and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But it is really hard out there. So when you get your foot in the door, make those contacts and keep up with people and, you know, realize that down the road you may need to pick up the phone and call a friend, and they may be the one that can help you get in the door of your next job. So I do think it's hard.
I think if you wait for somebody on this panel to discover you and help you get a job or hire you on a show, I think it is harder. But to mirror something that Jeannie said, it's like never before in the history of mankind has it been easier to get your voice out there for the world to see. You know, we've gone from smoke signals to send. You know, you guys can definitely create something for yourself on the internet. Right now, YouTube stars are more popular than Jennifer Lawrence. You know, this generation coming up, broadcast television means nothing to them. My kids don't watch broadcast television. You know, they watch the shows they like, they watch Netflix, and they watch Vine. I don't know what the hell Vine is. I don't get it. You know, but you can make 7-second videos and make a pretty good look. I know a guy who lives off of Fryman Canyon, and he's a Vine producer. You know, so don't think that just because you're an independent filmmaker, you must make film. You know, or be in television. There are a lot of different ways to get your stories out there. We're looking for them. I know Warner Brothers is looking for them. We're spending millions and millions of dollars trying to figure out what that next thing is. You know, we're making deals with. I'm making a deal with this production company. These guys who made a 20-minute short film using an iPhone, a prologue to a zombie apocalypse. All right. And it was a 4S, it wasn't even a 5S. And it's amazing, okay? So there are ways to make statements out there. Don't wait for us, because if you wait for us, you're dead in the water. And I will say, if you guys are getting an agent and you are writing in television, if you wait for your agent to get you a job, you're dead in the water, all right? You guys have got to hustle. This whole thing is a hustle. The one who hustles the most wins or writes the longest. So, I'll just say that.
No, it's true because, you know, even with, you know, everything that I have going on, I mean, my friend, director Greg Simon, who's sitting here, next Monday we're going to go out and shoot 4 comedy capsules that are 2 to 3 minutes long. They're super funny, kind of in the vein of Curb Your Enthusiasm, but, you know, why not? I mean, I'm sitting around, you know, writing, but why not just direct and do something different and something else? So it's important to keep the content flowing, if you will, if you have the opportunity to, and it doesn't cost anything nowadays. We're doing it with a couple of 5Ds. Andrew, you have anything to add?
Nope.
No?
Glad
You good?
You're getting this one on.
I didn't even have to.
So I'm going to take some.
I didn't even have to tell him. That was awesome.
I had an instinct. I'll leave this one up there. I'm going to take some audience questions now. Anybody? Anybody have questions?
There's a lot of talking about writing and getting the television from a writer's perspective, and I know it is more of a writer's medium than independent cinema, but as a director, what's your take on breaking into television as a director? Do you have any advice on that?
Do not hold your breath. It's taken me a long time. You know, I've been trying to do it for 8 years, and this year I've finally cracked the code with my manager and with Jeannie and with Chris and a few other people. So it's not easy, but it's, you know, they always say like what you dream of and think of most is what you will become. You know, and I've always dreamt of directing TV and being a showrunner, and that's sort of where I want to go. So I just honed in and focused, but I didn't sit around and wait for that opportunity. I made movies while I was trying to figure it out. So I would say that, you know, be patient, but be persistent. Definitely make contacts and just continue to generate content, you know, as much as you could. Yeah, I'll run over here.
Thanks. My question is a little bit about, if you write with multiple people or you have a writing partner, how do you best share intellectual creative property?
If it's a writing partner, it's a 50-50 split. I mean, if you're doing a 70-30 split with somebody, you're going to get 30% of them. I've never heard of anybody other than a 50-50 split, and I've never heard of 3-person, so usually it's 2 people, and it's a 50% chop. You're splitting whatever the fee is with the WGA, so you're writing, unless you get into upper level writers, producer and above, where you can possibly negotiate separately based on what your negotiating position is, but usually it's 50-50.
My question's actually a follow-up to the guy in the corner. Again, looking from a director's point of view, I'm quite curious to see how directors are chosen and what particular media that you're actually looking for within television. So for instance, we all do short films. Most short films are contained pieces, perhaps 8 to 13 minutes long. Would it be more advantageous if we're looking to get into TV to actually do a spec 1 episode, or there's a cliffhanger at the end? That's my question.
As a director?
I think most of us here are writers and directors, but
Right.
I'm just thinking primarily as a director, from that point of view. I think you've all answered very, very well how to kind of enter the market writing, but as a director, how does that work? Because just one small comment is that since we see a lot of TV, watching a lot of TV, you also do notice that the writer credits for most of the major TV networks, TV episodes, TV series are not actually the same name as the director. So I'm quite curious to see how that works.
So the director in the television medium is a guest, usually. They're called episodic directors, and they come and direct the episodes for the shows. And sometimes we have a producer-director who's a director who's hired to make sure the creative palette of the show is consistent amongst all the directors. In terms of breaking into directing, this past year, with the negotiations between the producers and the DGA, we as studios and networks have agreed to create programs to help increase the number of women and diversity directors, as part of the DGA rank and file, getting jobs on our shows. So Warner Brothers, we have created one, and then Genie had one way before we did. And what I discovered, and we are, you know, we look for diversity, but we also look for all directors of all shapes, sizes, and colors. But what I discovered in talking with our producers, and I will say, getting your first director job on a television is one of the hardest things to do in this business, because you're shooting 8 pages a day versus 2.5, whatever, features are, feature films shoot. I know you guys independent features, you guys shoot a lot more as well. But for us, like Jeannie said, it's like that train is rolling. So if we bring somebody in for the first time and they screw it up, it's not the executive producer spending some midnight oil fixing a script. It's the studio spending millions of dollars to try and fix that problem so we can get it ready. So the standard's high, and in my conversations with our producers, I was like, if I were to give you a director, what would you need to make you feel comfortable? And they said, good material, obviously, and features. Like short films just weren't enough. So I did, and I got them 3 directors for every show, and once I started setting up the interviews, they started getting nervous. They started saying, well, Chris, I don't know if we want to do this program because, we don't want it to blow up in our faces. But the second part to being an episodic director is your demeanor, who you are, your presence. Okay, so let's take David Rodriguez for an example. He comes in, gives a great interview, he inspires confidence. Somebody meets him and they go, okay, this guy, I can see him leading a crew of 75 people, through, on location or on the lot. So that's what you have to bring to the table, before you get that shot. Now, in terms of the short films, I'll say this, every studio, they're starting to create more digital content. Warner Brothers is starting to invest more money in digital content, and I'm getting calls from that division saying, hey, what directors do you have? We're having these products come up, because they don't know. So short films, I feel, will be something of value for you guys if the studios and networks start to put more money into that medium. Answer your question?
Pretty much. The other exception to that is, are you looking for, just as a general question, is it more advantageous on your side to see completed short films or feature films that have a full story, or the ability to kind of create a 1-hour piece that has such a big
Feature films is like the holy grail for me in terms of showing a producer. And short films as well. You can't diminish some of the accomplishments, but just a feature film for our producers lets them know, okay, this person finished a feature film, and for whatever reason in their mind, that's a great accomplishment. And I would challenge them to shadow a commercial director, and see how much effort they put in that, or even you guys. We found in the past that the big time feature directors who do like $70 million pictures are less successful than the lower budget directors on episodic television, because you're used to a different speed. They can't sit there and make those adjustments. They don't have 4 assistants anymore helping them. But with the independent directors, you guys have a little bit of that episodic spirit built into you. So,
any other questions? Paul Victor. Paul Victor, by the way, actor, True Detective, Entourage, and he just finished working with Martin Scorsese on Rock and Roll.
Wow, it's very nice. What kind of deal did you make with that 4S movie?
We brought them in to...
How'd you find them, actually?
One of our producers on the lot, this guy who produced Mortal Kombat and this other web series called H+, he found them we needed some kind of marketing thing done, and his assistant worked with those guys. He was one of those guys, and hey, I'll do that for you. And they created this marketing thing that was amazing. And then they mentioned that, we did this zombie thing, and it blew him away, and so he introduced me to him, and I said, I want to make a deal with those guys. And so we're making a deal for them to come in and create, whether it's a show based on one of our comic book characters or an original idea, and then we go out and pitch it and see if we can, we can develop it and go out and pitch it to one of the Crackles or Machinima or Yahoo and stuff like that.
And how long was their little film that they made?
It's like 20 minutes.
Could you just tell me a little bit about like why it was so amazing?
Well, it was just
the story was great.
It opens up with a group of people at a campsite, filmed over there in Royal Mountains in Pasadena, and people are getting shot while they're trying to leave the campsite. Long story short, we discovered that the army is trying to contain a virus. And it's just really the conflict between these people trying to figure out what the fuck is going on. And when you look at the direction, you can put this up on a 35mm screen and it would still have the action dynamic. It makes you, when I looked at it, I go, wow, it really isn't the equipment. It's the person behind the lens framing the shot and the writer's telling the story.
They shot with a little phone.
Little 4S camera, yeah.
Amazing. Thank you.
Just on a side note, Bentley just did a 5-minute ad on a 5S. Bentley, one of the obviously the most premium brands in the world, used a phone and they had a little handheld jack, shot in black and white, edited on an iPad. Just to see if they could do it. You can find it on YouTube. It looks magnificent. And there were no weird filters, I think they put a wide attachment on the camera, but that's it. And there's a behind the scenes of how they did it after it on the YouTube video that's just phenomenal. So again, the story and character are everything because the excuse not to, Vine is a 6-second thing. I mean, it's amazing. We've never before as creatives, if we had the access, when we were kids, I'm gonna age myself a little bit, but to get an RE camera would be about $100,000 a day to rent, and you just couldn't, and you needed insurance, and you just didn't have access to the equipment to make the stories that you wanted to tell. And I think now it's where the rubber meets the road. Do you have the discipline to commit? What's day 67 look like? Everyone's inspired. You have the muse. Everything's amazing. Week 1, you get the attaboys, the attagirl. You're fired up. You're pumped. But what's day 67 look like? When the friends aren't giving you the hype speeches, no one's kind of returning your calls, the project's a little dusty, should you be here? LA's kind of weird. Day 67 is you get up and you just type the keys. You get up and you roll some calls. You get up and you just do the deal.
I wanted to piggyback onto something you said about I think the importance of not letting agents or development folks or anybody define you as a director or a writer or something. When I started acting a long time ago, I had a theater company, and we just made theater, and we did it in people's apartments, and we did it. And there's something about honoring the people you're around, who are just idiots like me, who aren't anybody. And now this little company we had, our Mary Louise Parker and Joe Mantello directs every third play on Broadway, and Peter Hedges who wrote Let's Eat Gilbert Grape. But at the time, they weren't those people. They were just the people who you worked with and you tried to honor. And there's something about the time before you make it in the door of the development people that's sacred, when you really get to do work that your heart is about, and it also makes you desirable, I think, to agents need to know you're somebody who creates something they can sell. And the more you make something, the more you're passionate, they see somebody who's going to do that. That's number one. The other thing I just want to quickly say is I had a breakfast with Robert Rodriguez and we were talking about El Rey, and we were talking about the idea of trying to stay ahead of things. And he said, yeah, so I made a TV network, and it got a lot of exposure and variety in all these places. But when I started at El Rey, it was me and one other guy. That's all it was. Everybody thought it was this gigantic thing, and it wasn't. And I think there's something there about, yes, it's hard. Yes, people are getting paid less. It's always been hard. But I think to the degree it's hard, there's always opportunity. I recurred on 7 different TV series simultaneously last year. It's a great time. It's a great time, and it's a hard time, and it fucking should be, because it's an honor to be involved in it.
Tim Ginney, guys, great, wonderful actor, been around for a long time, so thank you. So I guess we're going to wrap this up, and thank you everybody. Thanks first to the panelists for being here on your Saturday.